Okay, this is Brian Yates, and welcome to the Montgomery County MUD number 7 Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, July the 20th, 2021. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the remote meeting procedures and then perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the make of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this afternoon so that we can accurately reflect the attendance and the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Once I've completed, likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for director, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with our board of directors, Kyle Mays.
Here.
Paul Nelson.
Paul Nelson here.
Henry Cheek. Absent. Stephanie Zertucci.
Present.
Don Sarich. Do we have Don Sarich in the meeting?
His audio is still connecting, but it looks like
Okay.
he's here.
All right, we do have a quorum of at least 3 directors who've been able to identify themselves, so we'll move on to the roll call for Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Here.
Maureen Bourgeois.
Present.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Jeannie Scott.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting? Okay, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly.
Present.
Ed Shackelford.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting?
Yes, sir. This is Brett Rayleigh from the Lake Conroe Division.
And Wayne
Okay,
Owen is here as well.
Okay, anyone else from the River Authority?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on to MUD 7 consultants. Do we have any MUD 7 consultants in the meeting? And members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well. Maureen, does that cover everybody who appears to be logged in?
Yes, it has.
All right, that will conclude the roll call. Kyle, I hand it over to you to begin the agenda. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. So this is Kyle Mays. The meeting's now to order, and that brings us to item 2, receive comments from the public. Do we have anybody from the public that wants to speak today? And there being none, we will move to item 3, which is consider and act on requests for adjustments or relief from specific charges. And then that's also on item 4. So
Hi,
This is,
I don't have
man, this is Mike. I have nothing for item 3.
okay. Item 4, 33 Wavy Oak, who's going to talk to us about that one.
This is Mike. Miss LaPierre is not going to be able to attend today. She wanted to be pushed back to the August meeting. But just a recap of what we did last month. She's had a high bill for the last several months. We went and met with her in April, told her she had a leak. We did not know where the leak was, but it appeared to be a leak inside, on her side of the meter. She got a high bill again in May. Called again. We still noted there's some leak somewhere, but we could not pinpoint the leak. We went back in June. She had another high bill in June. She did let us in the house after our last meeting. We walked around the house, looked at a toilet. She admitted that she did have to jiggle a handle on one of her toilets to make it shut off. We told her to fix that first, and then we can come back and see if there's any more leaks. We had not heard back from her until today. She sent an email today requesting that her case be heard in August, but she did send a rather lengthy, a rather numerous bunch of attachments, all her old bills, her lease agreement, just a bunch of stuff. But she did have one bill in there that showed she had her toilet fixed, repair bill. Well, the date of the repair was July 2nd. We've checked her usage since July 3rd, and it's gone down to less than 100 gallons a day. For example, her monthly consumption for April was 57,000 gallons. Monthly consumption for May was 89,000 gallons. For June was 59,000 gallons. And then for July, up through yesterday, 2,700 gallons. So we believe that she's fixed the problem. We don't show any other leaks. There's several days in there with zero consumption, which coincided with the time she said she was out of town and traveling. So we believe she's fixed the problem. The toilet, whatever she did to the toilet, has corrected the issue. We gave her an unexplained usage credit back in May, just under $400, $398, I believe. Her actual balance now owed is about $1,200. She's gotten, like I said, the April, May, and June bills were all significantly higher, $600, $700, $800 bills. She's disputing that amount, claims that her toilet's been running since the day she rented the apartment, as per her lease agreement, when she noted that the toilet handle was stuck. And she's done nothing to change her usage pattern. No sprinkler system, no pool, no water softener, none of the usual suspects. But we firmly believe that whatever she did to the toilet fixed the problem. So she wants to come back, long story long, and she wants to come back in August and plead for a bigger adjustment.
Any questions, comments for Mike about this situation? Thoughts on the board about whether a remedy is a good idea or not? I mean, clearly, or most likely, it's the residents' failure to fix the toilet until recently that caused the problem.
Yeah, and this is Mike again, and just to further expand, we have in our policy that, you're eligible for 2 months of repairs, but you can't let it just go on and on until you just get around to fixing it. So one of those 3 months, I think the lower of the three, you got an 89, a 59, and a 57. Maybe the 57 should not be eligible for adjustment, but the 89 and the 59 should be. And maybe we remove the unexplained usage and give her the running toilet usage for the 2 months that she would be eligible.
Okay.
Pretty astounding example of how much water can be used through a leaking toilet.
We get it every day. People just cannot fathom that I don't see that kind of water. There's no way that water, it's not on my yard, and they're right. It's going right down the sewer. You never see it.
So Mike, your suggestion that maybe those 2 months could be mitigated somehow, can you put something in writing that maybe we can discuss for next month when this lady shows up on the agenda? And doesn't mean that the board has to vote on and approve that, but it just means that's kind of your suggestion that we can vote on. And
yes, sir. And what it might be is that it might be something that does not need board approval. It may not be over the $1,000 threshold. But she still, I still fully anticipate her wanting more than the policy allows. Yeah, I'll put that together.
I'm all for it if you and the staff make a suggestion to her that's within the policy and she accepts it, just take care of it and move on. And that'll be one less thing to deal with next month.
We'll do our best, but be prepared.
Okay. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Last month's minutes, financial reports and disbursements, investment reports, tax collector report, and approval of expenses for any kind of trustee meetings or business. Anybody have questions about any of those items? Want to dig into details of those? Items 5 through 9. All right, then if everybody is happy with those items, would somebody like to propose that we approve the information in our consent agenda? Man, I feel like I'm here by myself.
So
No,
move,
I'm-
Nelson.
Move.
Paul Nelson
Second,
makes a motion.
Mr.
I got
Sarich,
Paul
second.
Nelson make a motion. Don Sarich makes a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. This is Kyle Mays, so I vote aye. And Don, how do you vote?
Aye.
Paul, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Stephanie?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. That brings us to item 10 for the SJRA Woodlands Division report.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess. I don't have anything for the Woodlands Division report, but I do need to hand it off to Brett Rayleigh, who has a few items to cover.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen with you real quick. And let me know if it is showing up. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to go over the Lake Conroe Division, as you probably know, takes care of all the operations and maintenance at the Bear Branch Dam and the flowage ways through the woodlands. I wanted to just briefly touch on our 10-year project plan, as well as the operations and maintenance budget for next fiscal year. So there's two projects in particular that I need to bring to your attention. Both are at the spillway at the dam. One is the area that you see highlighted in the dashed yellow, and it's shown on the left. It's soil cement on the upstream face of the dam. And we've known that it's been deteriorating for several years now. We had an initial study performed by a consulting engineer in 2014 that identified this soil cement as degrading, gave it a limited lifespan. And then more recently, we had a required TCEQ dam safety inspection from another consulting firm that just affirmed that, yes, it's degrading and suggested that we need to take action within the next 3 to 5 years. So this project has been on the radar, so to speak, for quite some time, but we've accelerated where in the project plan it is due to this latest inspection. And as you can see, it's on the order of $1 million. And I'll talk more about it, about the money involved in just a moment. But before I do, is that clear what I'm referring to there? The concrete on the upstream face would start, if you can see my cursor, would start up about here. So this is the lower portion of the front elevation of the dam. It extends on into the water.
So what is soil cement?
I'm gonna let Ron or Ed kind of describe that because they can describe it better than I can.
Okay,
Okay, Ed, you want it or me?
well, I'll take a stab at it and then Ron can add more technical data as we get into it if I don't get it all right. This is a combination of where you're mixing dry cement with the soil to stabilize the ground. In small doses, it comes from a pug mill and dumped out on the ground. The contractor spreads it. Something like this would probably be mixed on site as they're adding soil and blending cement and water to have it set up.
So thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's the expected life of soil cement in this application?
Say that again, Kyle, please.
What's the expected life of soil cement in this application? And, is this something that's going to have to be done every 10 years or 20 years or should we
Probably normal is 20 to 25 years. And this has been down since the 80s.
And we'd be more than happy to share the comments from this year's inspection, as well as the report from 2014, if you would like to see those. I will tell you that the roughly $1 million that we have was an estimate given by our current consulting engineer. And they provided to us 4 different alternatives to choose from. And all four, well, 2 they were stepped alternatives where they step it down just like a staircase, and alternatives where it's a continuation of the concrete slope that's just above it. And both of those configurations were given to us in both soil cement and in concrete. And as you might expect, there's trade-offs with concrete being slightly more expensive, but given a lot longer lifespan. And so that's kind of where that's a decision that is yet to be made. If we're good on that one, if there's no more questions, I'll go to the next project. This is another area of the spillway. What took place here is that the SJRA staff during routine inspections had discovered what has been a slight crack in a joint or in a compound joint for some time that had widened considerably. And upon seeing this, we of course called our consulting engineer. There was a rain event that was imminent. And so upon their advice, we went ahead and pumped this full of flowable fill. And, it was just a stopgap measure just for the time being. When we did that, flowable fill began to exude underneath the water here. You can't really see it, but in joints that are at the joint between the bottom and this sloped side, and even joints up here by the energy dissipation blocks on the left, we were seeing flowable fill, coming through. And so that immediately, got our attention. It's like, the first question is, okay, how extensive is this void? And so upon the advice of our engineer, first of all, the engineering came out and did a field visit and took adequate notes and drawings and things, pictures. Subsequently recommended that we have a ground penetrating radar study done. And so we hired that on our own. We went out and hired a firm to do that. And if you refer to the picture on the bottom left, part of what's happening here is we're just identifying portions of the spillway. But the main thing that was of concern is that just about everything that you see in yellow came back from the report as having the potential for voids beneath the concrete. And so something on that magnitude is very suspect to be, just right off the start. And then the nature of some of them, the depth and width of some of them were such that, in the engineer's opinion, the concrete, the specifications of the concrete, the rebar that's used and the number of the concrete there's no way that it could physically span the kind of voids that were being suggested. And so both those things together, how prevalent they were and the size of them, it just didn't add up. So we, of course, asked our consultant to give us a review of the report and provide us with a recommended path forward. And they've done so. And the path forward is for next fiscal year. And it's to further investigate what's going on here at the spillway in terms of voids. And so we've allocated funds to it for two different things. We've allocated $100,000 for the consultant to go hire their own experts to do another ground penetrating radar study, as well as other what they call destructive and non-destructive testing, so that they can look through the slab without damaging it, and then some where they also core into the slab so that they can get a profile of the soil beneath the slab, stick a camera in there, take a look around. And so part of the money earmarked for next year on this project is to do investigative work. And part of it is earmarked for doing design of a repair should that be needed. So that's what the FY 2022 funds are for, is for on this project. So if I go to the next slide, what I'm trying to show you here is the full 10-year time period for our project plan. As you can see on the left, we have 4 projects, 2 of which I just described to you. The other 2, one of the other 2 is earmarked, but not necessarily will be necessary when we get to that, when we get to fiscal year 2024. These are both the one in 2024 and the one in 2029 are earmarked. But if we get to that point and there's nothing extensive that needs to be redone with regards to our emergency action plan, like typically new inundation mapping or a new breach analysis would be reasons why we would want to redo the action plan. If we get to those years and that's not required or needed, then we won't have to spend those funds. They're just earmarked in case. The dam inspections are mandated by the state. And so the one in 2026, as well as the one in 2031, excuse me, are mandated. And so we have those in there, and we do intend to spend those funds. But the point of really the first 2 projects was to highlight the 5 cells that are highlighted in yellow. The soil cement repairs that are in 24 and 25. That's where in 24 we will do the engineering that's required to make the repairs of the soil cement in 2025. So design 2024, repairs in 2025. The other project, you can see the $250,000 that I mentioned a moment ago in next fiscal year. But then until we get the results of that investigative work, we really won't know when or how much we'll need to spend over the next few years to address that problem. And so that's why you see those as empty cells right there. So what we have effectively done after much deliberation inside the fence is we know these are big ticket items. We already know that the soil cement is a big ticket item. The void project has the potential to be large, to be $3.5 million project. We asked our engineer for the high end. What's the worst case? And so that project plus the project above could be as much as $4.5 million. So what we're recommending, we wanted the MUDs to be able to get out in front of this because they're so costly or potentially costly. And so as you can see in the lower chart, we've made a recommendation of, I don't know whether you would refer to them as reserve funds or escrow funds, but trying to set some money back in advance of these projects so that you'll be able to pay for them as they come. And so what you see here is what we've recommended for each of those fiscal years for, quote, reserve funds, as well as what the 5 MUDs that help pay for this system's contribution would be in each one of those years for those reserves.
So I have a
And
question.
on the
This
far-
is Kyle.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And obviously the SGRA has other customers that use water from the lake. And is there a breakdown that shows who else is paying what? Like what's Conroe paying or any other SGRA customers? Because it's hard to get a sense of what our share is through this information.
Mike, do you want to just reiterate or restate the nature of the contract? Would you like me to?
Well, could I answer that?
Yes, sir.
Kyle, there's no one else paying for this other than the 5 Woodlands muds. This Bear Branch is not shared by it's not shared by anybody other than the 5 muds in the Woodlands.
And that's what I was going to explain about the contract, Kyle. It's just that there is an existing contract between the 5 muds and SJRA. And then what Ron just said, it's the obligation is to those 5 muds.
Okay.
So the whole point of this slide was to show you the 4 projects, show you approximately when we anticipate them taking place, giving you an idea of a recommendation to try to start preparing for those projects. This, on the other hand, is the standard operating and maintenance budget for next year at Bear Branch. So on the far right column, you can see that the total expenditures is $568,187. We expect, by just extrapolating, we expect by the end of the year that we'll have $84,298 that will carry over to fiscal year 2022, which means that the total burden among the 5 muds for next year is estimated to be $483,769. And so this is just a snapshot of next year's anticipated budget based on where we sit today in the current budget and all the things that we have highlighted in the operating budget for next year. So this depicts the different mud contributions just to next fiscal year's operating budget. So you can see it's the same percent split that I showed a few minutes ago. And then if the bottom chart shows that if the individual muds chose to make the recommended reserve payments that we showed and gave their contribution to next year's operations and maintenance budget, the total burden to the mud, so to speak, for next fiscal year is shown in the right column on the bottom right.
So this is Kyle. Another question, is the purpose of this lake for drainage and flood control? What is the purpose for Bear Branch Reservoir?
Ron, I'll take a stab, and if you need to interrupt me, please do. There are some irrigation water rights. I think it's for Carlton Woods. So Carlton Woods does have a permit with the state to irrigate out of the lake, but it's my understanding that many years ago that the whole drainage system, the Bear Branch Dam, the reservoir, and the roughly 4.5 miles, I believe it is, of flowage ways from Panther Branch, Alden Branch, and Bear Branch all the way to just downstream of Gosling is all a component of the stormwater plan for the Woodlands. Is that correct, Ron?
For this drainage area of the Woodlands, not all the Woodlands, just this drainage area. So it's some parts of the Woodlands drains to other areas that don't feed into Bear Branch. Yes, that's why that's why there's only 5 muds that contribite to this.
Yes, sir. I just kind of didn't say it very clearly.
So where I'm going with this is we're getting ready to do a multi-million-dollar drainage improvement project, widening and deepening channels downstream from this lake. And now we're hearing that Carlton Woods, has kind of a claim on the water. Seems to me like maybe it's premature to start having these muds budget for this when we're getting ready to have a grant and borrow money to do additional drainage spending, downstream. It seems like maybe this could be incorporated as part of that project. and maybe Carlton Woods or any other beneficiaries of the lake could be part of that project as well.
This is Don. I have a question. Does Carlton Woods pay for their irrigation water?
Ron, I don't know the firm answer, but I don't believe that they pay SJRA for it, because SJRA's only right to that water is for recreation. That's all we have in the Bear Branch.
Yeah, all we take care of is drainage. And I guess to your answer, Kyle, the contract that we have is simply with these 5 MUDs, and that is to basically maintain the reservoir, the dam, and then mow the floodway or maintain the floodway, which is mowing it, and then when there's a flood, to get rid of the trees that have fallen. That's what the contract basically consists of.
It sounds to me like this multi-million-dollar project needs to be distributed more broadly and not just on these 5 MUDs. You know, are there any recreational activities going on? Do we have dragon boat races, or do we have any kind of you know, kayaking or other activities going on where people, you know, have a lease or whatever to use, have a right to use this lake?
So shallow, it's just fishing, and even then it's not that great.
I feeling when the MUDs made this contract, you know, they weren't expecting multi-million-dollar, you know, dam repairs, and so I think this is going to have to get escalated a little bit to see if there's other ways to pay for it than just these 5 MUDs.
Well, I don't know, Jim, that would probably take a revision then to the contract, because I'm just going by what the contract says.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe this is where our attorney, Brian, if you can opine at all on if there's any, you know, the township offered to pay for some of these other drainage improvements, or at least talk about it. And you know, we've got this potential to borrow money to make some of these other drainage improvements. So can that be incorporated into some of the downstream projects to maybe include dam repairs as part of it?
This is Brian. Well, for one thing, I'd have to go back and look at the agreement that we're talking about as it relates to the reservoir, but then as to the channelization, I think that is a separate, distinct project that was described in the grant. If you're talking about the grant application to Texas Water Development Board, that I don't believe we could pull in any potential dam repairs as part of that project. It was fairly specific about what the purpose was and what the benefits would be, and that process has already been completed and grant/loans awarded.
Well, if it's really, no kidding, just a silted in shallow lake that's not good for much, you know, what are we doing with a multi-million-dollar dam on it?
It's a flood
retention
pond.
So is it doing that, or is it all silted in and not serving its purpose?
It is performing a huge service to the residential neighborhoods downstream. Without that reservoir and detention basin there, yeah, it serves a big purpose. Now, what I would recommend is, you know, the Biden jobs plan or the American jobs plan and the infrastructure resiliency rebuild act, this might be a candidate for that sort of grant or funding, but I don't see it as being able to commingle the Texas Water Development Board, Bear Branch, Panther Branch Drainage Improvement Project with this.
Jim,
Brian,
do the improvements that we're doing downstream, the capacity we're adding there, does that help with the capacity needed at the dam?
it only helps because we are,
or lessen the capacity needed at the dam?
well, the goal is to be a zero-sum game, that what the improvements that we're going to do will lower the water surface elevation of Bear Branch around the high school and around the soccer fields, but we're going to be installing detention that will mitigate that flow improvement through that area. By redefining the channel and thinning it out, we're going to speed up the velocity and lower the water surface elevation. But then, as you know, we've got to mitigate that so we don't cause additional harm downstream.
So I guess the question, Jim, is what is the capacity of detention for Bear Branch Reservoir? Does it need to be dredged out? Is it even doing much good? I understand it's doing some good, but what should the capacity be? What could the capacity be if they dredged it out and
well,
made it something more than a shallow?
it's constructed as a wet bottom detention facility. So it has a normal pool, so it's able to be used as a recreational impoundment during non-rain events. But during rain events, it's got substantial storage capacity in it. And the silt that may be in there is below the water surface, the standard pool elevation. So it's not decreasing the storage capacity of the facility.
Well, I think by definition, as the silt accumulates over time, it is reducing the storage capacity.
If the silt were to come up above the normal pool elevation, yeah, but I don't think that's the case with this reservoir. It's still 3 or 4 or 5 feet.
If the water depth goes from 10 feet to 8 feet because it's silting up, then that's less storage capacity.
I would disagree. For stormwater detention, if it's a wet bottom detention basin, it can be only 1 foot or 6 feet deep or 20 feet deep. It's not going to impact the ability of that structure to store rainwater. And I would have to sit down and draw it out for you. But Stephanie, I think you would have to agree with me on that.
Well, I guess I'm not as familiar with wet bottom detention basins, but I do have my little manuals here that I can look into it and just get better understanding.
Yeah, it's designed to be a standard pool elevation. And then once it exceeds that, it has some overflow. Now, during a drought, you may get some additional storage just by luck, but it's not planned for that additional storage.
Storage is from the water surface up, not the water surface down.
Correct.
Right, and if you take my argument to the extreme, your 10-foot deep reservoir over 50 years silts up and now it's 6 inches deep. Clearly, there is not as much storage capacity to retain runoff.
I understand what you're saying, but from an engineering standpoint, what it's designed to do, the amount of silt in it doesn't impact what it's designed to store.
Jim, you're saying that the detention is actually designed from the water up to the spillway, not what's being held below.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The water is pretty much dirt.
That doesn't even make sense. Okay, well, clearly I'm outnumbered here, but I'm happy to I think what needs to be considered is this whole system, the reservoir, the dam, the downstream, lake woodlands, it's all designed to handle runoff and flood mitigation and that kind of thing. And so if this whole system is tied together, and there's potential for millions of dollars in repairs needed, then I'd like our attorney to review the contract and to advise us next month on our options. Even if it's, you know, political options, to talk to the township or talk to other MUDs or other constituents and figure out how we're going to pay for this thing.
There are some other important things about the whole system that we can share at a later date. Not the least of which is the hazard rating that TCEQ gives this dam, and as such, why maintenance and upkeep is of such importance. But we can go into that at a different time.
Brett, and there's grants available. It being oh, you said we don't know the hazard rating, I guess.
No, it's a high hazard dam.
So there are grants available for high hazard dam improvements too, right?
I can't answer that one. I've read a few things that say they might be available, but I'm not up to speed on those grants. But the main point, I mean, obviously all the conversation is good and relevant. The main thing we wanted to get across is that, you know, it is apparent that there will need to be we need to address some concerns at the dam. Those are going to cost significant amounts of money, and we wanted to get, and contractually, there's 5 MUDs that cover those expenses, and we wanted to get it out in front of each of the MUDs. So that's what we've done. Sounds like there's a lot more to discuss. So I know we've taken a lot of questions, but if there's any more, we'll do our best to address them as well.
Brian, any additional thoughts or comments, or are you able to kind of give us some further clarification next month?
This is Brian. I think at this point, we'll take a look at that contract. We can visit about that next month and go from there.
Well, it also sounds like, since we've got multiple MUDs involved and potentially other constituents like Carlton Woods, this ought to at least be an agenda item for the Woodlands Water Trustees in August. Is that fair? Can we request agenda items, Jim, for the Woodlands Water Trustees?
This is Brian. It would be a trustee. It'd be a trustee request, Kyle, and we can visit offline about whether it's something to be discussed at the Woodlands water level or just among the MUDs, since, you know, we got roughly half the MUDs that aren't involved in this project. We'll have to visit, see if that's the best forum for it or not, but I think we can cover that probably offline with Jim.
Well, thank y'all very much.
Well, thank you, Brett.
Yes, sir.
All right. We're gonna have to go back and pick up another agenda item because Shelley tricked me. We had a revised agenda. So actually, the revised agenda, item 10, is to adopt a resolution casting votes for the Montgomery County Appraisal District candidate to be placed on a countywide ballot. Who would like to give us additional information on that?
This is your opportunity to actually cast your votes for the special purpose district candidate for MCAD. You may recall Arthur Breedehoff had been nominated and supported last month, I think, by virtually all of our MUDs. So this would be your opportunity to cast your votes for Arthur.
Okay, I make a motion that we vote for Arthur as our rep for the MCAT Special District.
I second that, Nelson.
Second from Paul. All right, let's call the votes. This is Kyle. I vote aye. And Don, how do you vote?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. So we got our River Authority. That brings us to item 12 on the revised agenda. Consider and act on fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for the SJRA Woodlands Division.
So this is Chris Mason. Good evening. If you have any questions on the budget we've previously presented, I can answer those. If not, this is the item to give direction to your trustee on how to vote at the August trustee meeting.
So
I'm
where
sure
do we
you've all
end?
memorized the budget.
Oh, I was wondering where we ended up on water, on surface water, groundwater split.
The split in the budget, Don, is 65% groundwater, 35% surface water.
Okay, so I went back to where it was.
Yes, sir. Same as FY 20 and 21, I believe.
Chris, is it fair to say that that could change based on various factors? That there are ways it could go to 50-50 depending on water usage or other things?
It is always possible for that number to be adjusted.
Okay, Don, is that clear enough? I mean, it's budgeted for 65-35, but that could change under some circumstances.
Yeah, that just means our expense will be going up.
That would be true.
Yeah, we budget a specific ratio. Now, in reality, that allocation may come out a little different, but Chris tries to get it back to what was budgeted. If we want to change it specifically to a different ratio, that requires action by our boards with the understanding that the surface water conversion fee will go up to our customers. We're not at that point today.
Yeah, I fully understand that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so as the MUD 7 trustee, I would be the one to vote next month to approve or vote against the SJRA Woodlands Division budget. So I'm going to ask if somebody else would like to make a motion, approving the budget for me to make that vote. That's fine.
Yeah, Director Nelson, I would move that we direct you as a trustee to vote in favor of the budget as presented.
Stephanie, I second.
Great, thank you. We'll go ahead and call the vote. This is Kyle. I vote aye. Paul, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Don?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Brings us to item 13, which is to receive and act on information for retaining the Trinity River Authority water supply agreement.
This is Ed Shackelford. Good evening. Good evening, directors. I am going to share my screen and show you the PowerPoint that we presented back in May and that was talked about at the trustee meeting last week. If you recall, we had visited with you all in May, letting you know that the River Authority needs to make a decision in the near future as to future water supply options for Montgomery County. So can you all see my screen? Those of you that have the computer?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
So the issue is, you all are aware that the growth occurring in Montgomery County. And in the future, there will be a need for additional water supplies because the demand exceeds the available capacity of both the lake and the aquifers. And it offers that several different supply strategies will be needed. We had one mud director today ask about possible water conservation. And yes, that's a factor that could be considered. Right now, SGRA has a 50,000 acre foot option for per year from the Trinity River Authority. And we've got to decide how to proceed. So this chart shows you from Region H, the Region H planning group. And if you look at the municipal category, about the 5th or 6th one down, you can see that in 2020, they're estimating about 101,000 acre feet per year of consumption on the municipal side. And that number grows to 272,000 acre feet per year in the year 2070. They work off of a 50-year planning period. And knowing that Lake Conroe will produce 100,000 acre feet per year of firm yield, and not knowing what Lone Star will do, but assume that they will limit at 100,000 acre feet. So if you look out at 2050 and the total of almost 198,600 acre feet per year, that's roughly 200,000 acre feet. And so we're anticipating that depending on what Lone Star does, additional water supplies will be needed after 2050, basically 30 years from now. And this 50,000 acre feet is leased water from the Trinity River Authority. It would come out of Lake Livingston and brought into Lake Conroe. And you can see from the exhibit on your screen that there are several possible routes to bring the water in. This would be an additional 50,000 acre feet per year. The numbers that you will see going forward in future slides does not include construction, engineering and construction costs of pipelines, pump station or canals, but we've estimated that that cost may be in the $200 to $300 million range. So currently, we are paying $237,500 per year to maintain this water supply option. Going forward, by the end of this year, we've got to commit to the TRA to change that water supply option to a service area agreement. Estimated cost is around $250,000. We've got to initiate interbasin transfer permitting. We're anticipating not only by pushing it through the TCQ on their permitting process, but this may require a couple of legislative sessions to allow for the interbasin transfer, taking water out of the Trinity River watershed and putting it in the San Jacinto River watershed. Come April of 2028, the deadline to convert that service area agreement to a water supply contract occurs. And that's when the costs start to get a little bigger. It's $1.5 million roughly per year reservation fee on that 50,000 acre feet. And that basically preserves the right for SGRA to build a project and transfer the water. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, it talks about the potential increase to the water bills. So we're talking from 2022 to 2027, roughly 10 cents per household per month to retain the water option. In 2028, that price goes to about 20 to 25 cents per household per month. And that's assuming a 10,000 gallon a month user. Now, again, these numbers do not include any engineering or construction costs.
Is it fair to say that also doesn't include ongoing cost, to pump the water? There's going to be a lot of cost to run the pumps to pump up 50,000 acre feet per year.
Kyle, I'm going to go back to my comment earlier. This does not include any construction cost or O&M costs for the future water supply. Now, something to point out, this cost is spread across all of the GRP customers, all 80 customers, plus it's spread across the raw water customers that SGRA has. So it's not just the Woodlands paying for it, it's everybody that's in the GRP contract. And so what we're trying to do is get information from the MUDs to advise our board where the support is. The MUDs that we have met with today have indicated their support. They've voted and approved their support for proceeding with this contract and retaining the 50,000 acre foot long-term water supply option. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had a question, Mr. President.
Paul?
Yeah, I followed everything up until the end, and I know all the monies that we've been talking about throughout the years is the reservation fee.
Correct.
Is there at some point where you have to pay for that? Not just reserve it for 250,000, but at some point it goes to I bought this, it's now mine.
Well, SGRA will never own it. It'll always be leased water. TRA will retain the water rights.
Just the right to it. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
There was another question. Don?
Yeah. Back when you're on that slide now, the production of 30 MDD. I guess that's the plant production.
That is the phase 1 plant production. Yes, sir.
Okay. Phase 1 is actually 24.
Okay.
30 peak. So I wouldn't use 30 there, but and since we're only using 12 now, I mean, shouldn't that number be revised? Shouldn't that number be revised a little bit? It's minor, but
well,
it is a difference.
That's a good point, because I think when we were anticipating this, well, we know that if we do use that additional 50,000, both the aquifer and the lake will be kind of at their max production. Let me go back and take a look at this to see if anything changes.
Well, it'd be 2 a penny.
Can't do that year round.
Well, we're producing 12 now on the average. Ron, I think, were you trying to
be around
some comments?
Not a penny.
Say that again, Ron, please.
It would be around 2 cents. Not
right. It's not huge, but yeah, it's a difference.
So the statistics at the beginning of the presentation showed Montgomery County water usage increase. I think it would be interesting to know what's the projected Woodlands usage increase. I think both statistics are relevant.
Ask your question again, please.
So the question is, can you go back to the slide where you show the Montgomery County usage expected increase over the next 50 years or whatever? So what would, I think it would be interesting to see a statistic that shows not only, what does Montgomery County increase? So basically it doubles over the next, from 30 to 70. So basically over the next 50 years, it doubles. What is the Woodlands usage projected increase?
This is Ron. I think in the Water Development Board planning, the Woodlands remains flat, because what they're looking at for this area is that it's quote unquote built out. Now, how much redevelopment is the Woodlands going to have? And how much does that redevelopment increase water demand? Depends on what the redevelopment is. How many one-story, Jack in the Boxes are going to be torn down for a 30-story tower? We just don't know. But in the Water Development Board plan, it's flat for the Woodlands.
So where I'm going with this is, we help pay $500 million for the surface water to be run down to the Woodlands and other places. And, if all this growth is coming from outlying areas, it seems like that would be a logical place to carry a lot of the increased cost to bring in Trinity River water.
I think they will be paying. And Kyle, one way to think about it is the population will have significantly increased. The GRP, whether it's called GRP or not going forward is another matter, but there will be, this assumes that the water plant is maybe at 120 million gallons a day, ultimately, and that water is being distributed to more areas than what are currently being served today. So there could be more participants helping fund this, but right now we've got to base it on the 80 that are in the contract.
Yeah, that's correct.
The other thing,
also remember we're right now serving 12 MGD of raw water. Our wholesale customers are running at about 90 to 100 million gallons. So our wholesale customers are greatly overshadowing what is used in Montgomery County, and it is right. The only way you're going to ever need this water anyway is if Montgomery County does utilize surface water, and you need to use, expand the plant to use the surface water. Those people who will be, that means then that pool will be spread out over a larger number of people, a larger demand. And in essence, they will be paying the bulk of it. But the Woodlands will be paying some.
Yeah,
I guess where I'm going with this real quick is, we made this $500 million deal and, signed on with other water users who are now not fulfilling their end of the bargain. And how do we avoid having a deal to bring in Trinity River water and then have people try to back out of their end of the bargain on that future deal? So whatever contract we make needs to be bulletproof, or we're just, setting ourselves up for more trouble down the road.
Yeah. If I could add, this is Paul Nelson. I think I understand what you're saying, Mr. President. I think, but I also have to look at it as when we're 20 years down the road and all these supplies are depleted or being depleted, we don't get to say that ours comes out first. We just have a plant that's not got enough water to treat. And I think that we would all suffer if we didn't participate. I understand what you're saying again about, and like you said, the population is going to help distribute that cost. But I would also say that from my experience, one should never let an option to secure surface water go away. And I know.
And to be clear, Paul, I agree with you. And what I'm saying is we need to plan ahead in such a way legally to where we don't get ourselves in a bind with other parties to the agreement trying to back out of their obligation.
Ever again. I agree. Yes. And certainly that's true. And I just wanted to stress again that I understand that, and that needs to happen, needs to be done. But I also would encourage us as a group to support what Mr. Shackelford has presented as far as getting there and just making sure that we at least get to the point where we always have that 50 until someone decides that it's just not anymore necessary. But to me, once you have it, you need to keep that. History shows that if you let it go, it's going to be a whole lot more pain and agony to get some to replace it. And I said, I know you and I agree on that. I just wanted to make that statement.
Well, we know that City of Houston is also looking for more water.
Yep.
They have told the North Water Authority and some of the other authorities in Harris County that they're pulling back 80 million gallons a day from the distribution to those water authorities.
Well, that's right. And as much water as they own or have rights to in the Trinity, they still can be looking for more.
Yes, because they know their population's growing.
Yes, sir. Especially given, like you said, serving all those at North Authority, West Authority, et cetera. Fort Bend.
So essentially, we're looking for a confirmation that you support SGRA moving forward and retaining this or dropping it.
So this is Kyle. Would somebody like to, or first of all, does anybody have any additional questions? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion that we approve as a MUD our support for maintaining this Trinity River water option?
You're asking for a motion?
Unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
I certainly make that motion.
Thank you, Paul.
Stephanie, I
Anybody like
second
to
that.
second it? Thank you, Stephanie. This is Kyle Mays. I vote aye. Don?
Yeah, aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. And
Thank y'all.
you know, the point for my comments, and I don't know if this is a Brian thing or whoever, but it just has to be remembered going forward that our agreements, you know, protect us from people trying to back out or you know, whatever, not pay for their part of the obligation.
Those would be River Authority contracts.
All righty. So that takes us to item 14, but I guess real quick, even though it's a River Authority contract, it can still negatively impact us if one of the other River Authority customers doesn't meet their obligation, like it has been, you know, with Conroe and Magnolia. So item 14 is to consider an act on appointing a stakeholder subcommittee member to participate in SGRA engineering consultant meetings related to the wastewater plant consolidation. Jim, did you want to add any more information on this?
Yeah, there's an email / memo from Ed in your packet that kind of highlights this task. It is a substantial commitment, but I want to stress that if you select a person and you find a person on your board that has the time to do that, there are going to be other opportunities to take a look at whatever strategy and whatever comments come out of that stakeholder group. You'll certainly get it at the trustee level and at your MUD meeting. So we hope you have got somebody that has the time and the desire to commit to that. But if you don't, all is not lost.
I would ask Don, is this something you feel like you're already qualified or well informed on and would be interested in participating in?
Yeah. Yeah, what sort of commitment are we looking at?
Don, there's probably, this is Ed Shackelford. Don, there's probably 12 to 15 months total timeline on phase 1. There could be a meeting every couple of weeks to talk about specifics to the consolidation. Those meetings could run anywhere from an hour to maybe 2 hours at a time. There's going to be some technical information. There's going to be some financial information. There's going to be some logistics associated with it, because we're looking at whether we combine all the plants and where, and if they all go to a brand new site, and looking at the net present worth for those projects.
Yeah, I've done a lot of master planning in my tenure. Woodlands being one, so I already looked at this question more than once. I think I would like to participate, yes.
I would like to nominate Don Sarich to be the MUD 7 rep on this committee. Any support for that nomination?
Support Don.
All right, then I'm going to make a motion that we officially nominate Don Sarich to be our rep for this stakeholder subcommittee.
I second that. This is Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Kyle Mays. I vote aye. Paul, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Don?
I guess I need to vote aye.
I guess you could abstain, but we'll accept that. So thank you, Don, for your willingness to serve. All right, that takes us to item 15 for the attorney's report. Brian?
This is Brian. Thank you, Kyle. Under the attorney's report, I've been mentioning to boards that the governor has formally announced that he will be rescinding his disaster proclamation related to COVID that suspended our in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act, effective as of September the 1st. So all districts that have not gone back to in-person meetings by that September 1st deadline will be required by law to do so starting in September. So this shouldn't have any impact on the Woodlands MUD, since all of those districts have agreed, including this one, to begin meeting in person next month. But for all other ones, all other political subdivisions will be following shortly behind the Woodlands in their in-person meeting schedule. So reporting that to boards, as well as letting you know that the legislative summary from the 2021 session is up on the Google Drive. As in previous sessions, it does provide a general overview of the session, as well as bills of interest for the special purpose district community, those that passed and significant ones that did not. Overall, as I reported at the trustee meeting last week, it was a fairly quiet session from the special purpose district perspective as far as what passed. Played a good bit of defense as usual in the session, but those efforts were by and large successful, and we don't have any significant bills that pass that will have a negative impact on the special purpose district community. So we're very pleased with that, and we'll be watching the special session if it ever really gets underway with all the political jockeying going on, to see if there are any changes in election requirements that would have to be implemented by our districts and the conduct of our elections. That's all I have to report under item number 15. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. And then item number 16 is going to be a deferral item today. We are still waiting on some backup documentation from the engineer LJA to be able to complete that resolution. So that will get carried forward to next month. So nothing to consider under 16, and happy to answer questions under 15 if you have them.
Anything else for Brian? Thank you, Brian. So item 16 is tabled. That moves us to item 17 for our general manager's report. Mr. Stinson.
Thank you, sir. I had a request from a MUD 46 director to look at the possibility of setting up some sort of a benevolent fund for residents in the Woodlands that were struggling to pay their water bills or were not able to pay. The examples I was given was the city of Houston has a program, the city of Huntsville has a program where customers can donate like $1 on their bill to go into this fund, then it would be administered to folks that are in need. So I told her that I would open the discussion at the trustee meeting, and Brian Yates informed us at the meeting that that may be very hard to accomplish for a MUD district, that cities had powers that MUD districts don't. So we've kind of put a pause on it now, pending further looking into, but we may have hit a brick wall with that effort. So more to come later. Also had a request from a resident in MUD 46 for me to look at, review the Ian McCard studies that were done for George Mitchell back in the 70s, in particular looking at drainage, groundwater issues, and I did that and found that it was very timely, that a lot of information in there regarding drainage and regarding groundwater usage. So I informed Shelley to send an email to the directors with a link to that. So if you've got time to look at those reports, I think it's kind of timely considering some of the issues that we're talking about today. I did report that we did receive a $35,000 damage reimbursement from TACUS for one of their 5 prime contractors. We have billed those 5 prime contractors for the damages that have been incurred, and one of them was not responding to our request, nor TACUS, so they paid that bill in full with the retainage they had from the contractor, and they are, from what I understand, applying some pressure for those 4 primes to work with us on getting those invoices resolved. So we'll see how that plays out over the next week or so. I did also report HARC has completed their recommendations for where subsidence monitoring devices could be placed throughout Montgomery County. So if you're interested in that, it's on our website and on the HARC website, along with a link to a story book they've put together regarding subsidence and groundwater issues. We talked about the 2 poles that we have residents requesting they be relocated. I reported on the cost associated with that, and Brian had revealed that in his opinion, those costs should be borne by the MUD district that the pole is sitting in, and that the residents are wanting the relocation. After some discussion, the trustees asked me to look at a cost sharing agreement and bring that back, what those potential costs would be to the MUDs at the next meeting. The American with Jobs Plan, SJRA staff and myself have met with Congressman Brady's director of regional director, district director, a very productive meeting. He has reached out to his staff in Washington, D.C. to let them know we want to do what we can to be put in the best position to try to obtain any funding that may come out of this Biden jobs plan. We're also working on our short list of what consultants or lobbyists may could help us with that. So, and also we've got a meeting set for Congressman Brady to attend and meet with us in August. So we'll be reporting back. And that concludes my report.
You know, it's interesting, Jim, we're talking about this potential cost sharing for moving towers, even though a limited number of MUDs may actually be responsible. You know, we might have that same type of discussion, you know, if it comes to repairs to the Bear Branch Reservoir. Just a thought.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Jim? All right, that brings us to item 18, which is receive Woodlands Water Trustees report. That would be my responsibility. Jim covered most of the items. One thing that we didn't cover was an item I brought up at the trustee meeting last week as it relates to MUD directors talking to the press and the code of ethics. There, if you look at page 37 in the packet, there's a summary of that discussion. And the issue was that we had the Woodlands Villager had an article in the June 23rd issue where Laura Norton was quoted as making several comments, some that were fairly or unfairly either misleading or inaccurate or whatever. And so I basically brought it up that in the code of ethics, we are, as trustees, whether or directors, whether it's MUD or the Woodlands Water Agency, we're not authorized to speak on behalf of any district or the WJPA without express authorization to do so by the governing body. So like if you want to go out and talk to the press and make a statement on behalf of MUD 7, you should come before the board at a meeting and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you guys approve it or not? And likewise, if you're on the trustee, WWA trustee board, then you should get authorization from that board before, you know, making public comments, particularly something that's going to be quoted in the press. And Laura Norton said, well, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't speaking on behalf of the board. And she actually forwarded emails and her explanation, which Shelley forwarded to everybody, the various directors. And if you go through the emails, you know, this reporter was specifically asking, you know, her, hey, can you tell me what the words? And do you have any comment on that as a MUD director? So clearly she was, the reporter was asking her to comment as a MUD director. And you know, I believe her comments were out of line. And as it turns out, some misinformation was reported. And that's a problem. Once bad information gets out there, it's hard to take it back and correct it. So my main concern is that everybody realize any kind of comments like that should be properly vetted and approved through the appropriate board. So that's the only thing I wanted to highlight that we haven't talked about. Any comments, questions on that? Okay, I'll move on. That brings us to item 19, which is matters for placement on future agenda. I think it's definitely, we're going to need to continue to talk about the issue of this Bear Branch Reservoir Dam and how do we pay for it? Are there potential partners? Is there, you know, other funding available? Those kinds of things. Are there other constituents that theoretically could be, you know, willing to pay?
Jim, I forwarded you an email, or I sent you an email. It was just a link to the FEMA's grants that they offer for high hazard dam rehabilitation.
Yes, I did see that. Thank you very, very much for that information, and we will look into it. Absolutely.
All right, anything else for placement on future agenda? Anyone? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle.
All righty, have a good night.